We're told our modern civilization is the absolute pinnacle of technology. But if that were the case, why is our calendar so wonky? Why do some months have 31 days instead of 30? Why do we add an extra day every 4 years? Especially when many ancient calendars were so precise, often never having to adjust. They could just cycle on and on for thousands of years. It's like we literally chose to use a less advanced calendar system. Why would the people in power over our modern world force feed us a system that is intentionally less advanced? Especially when we can see right in front of our faces the calendar systems that ancient man used that were often in some ways more accurate than ours today. So first off, there's something pretty odd that I found among a lot of ancient calendars. A lot of them use a 13-month system, and when you think about this, it actually makes way more sense than our 12-month cycle. 13 months would mean each month has exactly 28 days, 4 weeks on the dot. And there's even a 13th zodiac in our night sky that is rarely talked about. It's known as Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, right between Sagittarius and Scorpio. The sun passes through this constellation between November 30th and December 18th. Some cultures that used this 13-cycle system were the Celts and the surrounding Germanics and Norse going as far back as the Bronze Age, the calendar of the Inca in South America, the Ethiopian calendar which is still used today, the Haida people of the Northwest Pacific, the French Republican calendar from the French Revolutionary period, the traditional Balinese calendar from the indigenous people on Bali has a 13-month and 4-week system. Some Native American groups have used what is known as the Turtle Island lunar calendar, a 13-month system that closely aligns to the lunar cycles. The traditional Afghan calendar has a 13th month, every so often as a kind of leap month. The Igbo calendar from Nigeria uses this 28-day month system, resulting in 13 months. The Berber calendar of North Africa, the Maori calendar in New Zealand, and several ancient Hindu calendars use this 13th month as a leap month as well. Also the Hebrew calendar, the Babylonian calendar, the ancient Chinese calendar, and the Thai lunar calendar. And many other various indigenous groups had a 13th month in their tracking of time as well. So what's going on here? How can all these ancient cultures have had a 13-month calendar? And we even have a 13th zodiac constellation in our sky. And yet we still only use 12 months. How and when did this change? So we're told our modern calendar originated with the Romans, which was derived from Greek calendars, which incidentally also added a 13th month every so often to keep the months in line with the seasons. Eventually, Julius Caesar reformed this system, creating a 365.25 day calendar, this being the Julian calendar. Unfortunately, this system was slightly off, and would result in the seasons being off by 1 day every 128 years. Eventually, Pope Gregory XIII in the year 1582 created our modern system, the Gregorian calendar, which was adopted immediately by the Catholic world, and eventually by the Protestant world like Britain and America. And now it's the most widely used calendar across the world for its practicality. All this confusion over which calendar was best has led us to this theory of missing time, which basically is the idea that hundreds, possibly even thousands of years have been missed in our modern historical records due to such confusions over calendar systems, some of which may have been less than accurate. The more you look into how time has been recorded, the more you start to question the timeline of our modern narrative. So I think it's always best to question when things happened, and not take anyone's word for it. Do your own research, because a lot of these ancient calendars were extremely precise. For instance, we can pinpoint the life of many Mayan and Aztec rulers to the exact day, because they left us precise records and a calendar that works in perfect cycles with nature. And the reason they had such advanced knowledge was because that was derived from the original ancient Tartarian calendars. The people that inhabited the Americas literally traced their genetic lineage back to the people from Mongolia, northern China, and Siberia that migrated across the Bering Strait 10,000 years ago. and Native American languages literally share words with a language from Siberia known as the Ket, in the exact region where the Tartarians inhabited. This was why Columbus and the early explorers called the natives Indians. They came from India, which was just another word for Asia at the time, and another word for Tartaria. We see this on old maps, where the three words are interchangeable. They all refer to one region, and America was an extension of that because those were the first to travel from the old world to the new, across the Bering Strait by foot, and even after the melting of the ice caps by boat. The Polynesian people literally made it from Taiwan all the way to New Zealand, Hawaii, and Easter Island in a few thousand years by boat. The people of Siberia, Mongolia, and China could have easily traveled along the edge of the eastern coast of Siberia and Japan, up to the chain of islands between Russia and Alaska, during the warmer season. There's actually a tradition that the natives living on the islands in Alaska and Russia used to do that stopped not long ago, where a group of natives from an island in Russia would build a traditional whaleskin boat made from simple driftwood and hunted whaleskin, and travel to an island in Alaska on a certain day of the year to have some kind of festival. The people in the area 10,000 years ago were probably making the same kind of boats out of driftwood and whale parts. Anyway, this Tartarian calendar was one of the original pieces of knowledge that the people migrating across the world kept all those years ago after the Younger Dryas period that nearly destroyed mankind. We find this advanced kind of calendar spring up alongside the invention and spread of agriculture. Agriculture and the tracking of time go hand in hand. Knowing the seasons and changes in climate can be the difference between thriving and being wiped out. If you look at any of the Mayan or Aztec writings, it's always about the cycles of Earth, the seasons, and how things affect the growing of things like cacao and corn. I like looking at these cultures because they were one of the best at preserving this Tartarian calendar. But we could also look to the Babylonians, Egyptians, Chinese, Hebrew, Celtic, all these places where agriculture spread after the great disaster of the Younger Dryas. But why did we get rid of it? Well, actually a lot of places still use versions of these ancient calendars. The Chinese and the Jews, for example, have a type of lunar calendar that add this extra month period occasionally. It is only our modern civilization that has abandoned this way of timekeeping for a standardized and flawed system. A lot can be hidden when the way time is tracked is corrupted. For example, there could be entire cycles and systems that we don't recognize that could greatly affect us. The Mesoamericans tracked all the cycles to such precision that they predicted the downfall of their own civilization. Many of these ancient calendars could predict natural disasters or changes in our environment, in some cases to a higher degree than we can predict today with all our sensors and monitors. And many of these ancient civilizations said at the start of the calendar was a cataclysmic event that affected the entire Earth, almost wiping out human civilization during the last ice age. And they also predicted there will be another at the end of this cycle. But nobody knows when exactly that will be, because we have abandoned this technology. So when did we do this? Other than places that still keep this ancient calendar, the modern world has been standardized to the Gregorian calendar beginning in 1582. Before this, in the Western world, the Julian calendar was the standard. This one goes all the way back to Roman times when Julius Caesar updated the previous Romulus calendar in 45 BC. Julius Caesar made the old Roman lunar calendar align to the solar year by making it a 12-month, 365-day calendar, with a leap day added every 4 years like we still do today. Unfortunately, the calculations at the time were off by 11 minutes a year, leading to a whole day going unaccounted for every 128 years. The previous Romulus calendar was said to be invented by the founder of Rome in the year 753 BC. This calendar originally only had 10 months, and the wintertime, December through March, went unaccounted for. But it was eventually updated by King Numa Pompilius around 713 BC. The calendar still only recorded a 355-day year, so a 13th month known as Mercedonius was added occasionally to keep things in alignment. So it seems Julius Caesar was the first to do away with the 13-month calendar system. It's thought that this Romulus calendar was derived originally from Etruscan and Greek sources, and could actually have possibly originated in the city of Troy. Scholars dismiss this as legend, but an old Roman myth says that Romulus and his twin brother were the sons of the Trojan prince Aeneas, who himself was the son of Venus or Aphrodite in the Greek, who fled when the city of Troy was burning. The Trojans themselves were said in the Greek stories to have originated from a region further into the Anatolian region. They spoke an Indo-European language, making them related to all other Indo-European or Aryan peoples around the region, like the Scythian, Vedic, Old Persian, Thracian, Mycenaean, and Celtic cultures. So odd as it may seem, the predecessor to our modern calendar could trace its origins back to the city of Troy and possibly to older Mesopotamian civilizations before that, like the Babylonians or early Sumerians, possibly even the calendar-looking system that has yet to be deciphered at Göbekli Tepe. But it seems somewhere along the way we regressed and set aside many of the things we used to track in the night sky. The Babylonian calendar was actually pretty similar to the Romulus calendar. It had 12 months consisting of 29.5 days, adding up to 354 days, and then a 13th month was added every 2 to 3 years to keep the lunar calendar in line with the solar cycles. Their new year was on the vernal equinox, March 20th and 21st, and they had a specific day of the year they would start the agricultural season, much like we see with other ancient calendars that had specific days for planting to maximize harvest. They closely tracked all the cycles and patterns and movements of the stars and planets to get the biggest harvest they could. Agriculture was everything. That's why the technology of the calendar spread so rapidly alongside it after the last ice age. The Babylonians could also predict eclipses, and they had a deep and serious understanding of astrology. Many people say this is where our modern astrology actually originated. The Babylonians and other Mesopotamian cultures believed that celestial phenomena such as the positions and movements of planets and stars were signs from the gods and could influence human affairs. These mystics were called Chaldeans, and their interpretations were used to predict future events and offer guidance on political, military, and personal matters. They meticulously recorded celestial events including planetary movements and eclipses, and would develop tables to predict the movements of these bodies and come up with predictions to make decisions and guide actions. They believed that the gods communicated their will through celestial phenomena. Therefore, understanding and interpreting these phenomena was seen as a way to align human actions with divine will. This is also why they would build their cities in alignment with the stars and constellations. Many other civilizations did this too. Egyptians, Native Americans, Mesoamericans, Greeks, Chinese, Indus Valley people, ancient Japanese, Persians, and even the Polynesians. And we don't really have an explanation as to why other than to please the gods. But perhaps there is a real practical reasoning that has been lost. There's one more thing. It seems that the powers that rule our modern world almost did put us back on the 13-month system. After World War I, the League of Nations almost decided against the calendar we know today. Let me read you a couple of sections from this Washington Post article I found, titled, "The World Very Nearly Adopted a Calendar with 13 Months of 28 Days." In the aftermath of World War I, delegates from dozens of countries met at a League of Nations conference in Geneva, hoping to create a universal calendar that would unite the world. Consensus around the Gregorian calendar took nearly a half millennium to build, and it was short-lived, right after some of the final holdouts joined, including Russia, Greece, and China. The League of Nations announced plans for a total overhaul. In 1923, the League created the Special Committee of Inquiry into the reform of the calendar, and started accepting proposals. The goal was a perfect, standardized system of timekeeping, and the committee quickly zeroed in on the plan called International Fixed Calendar, or IFC. The IFC comprised of 13 months of 28 days. The benefit of the new calendar was uniformity. Each month would start on a Sunday and end on a Saturday, so you'd never have to ask, for example, what day of the week the 26th was. It would always be a Thursday. A one-day world holiday between the final Saturday of the year and Sunday, January 1st would bring the total number of days to 365. A secular world holiday must have seemed appealing in the early days of the first international diplomatic body, created following the war to end all wars. But not everyone was sold on the idea that a new calendar would unify people on a single consistent system. Jewish people especially had one major concern. The Jewish day of rest, the Sabbath, falls on every seventh day. With an added blank day inserted each December, the Jewish 7-day cycle, believed to be dictated by God, would no longer align with the days of the week. The Sabbath, a day on which work is prohibited for Jews, would land on a different day of the week and not necessarily on a weekend each year. The thought of the Sabbath falling on Wednesdays had the Jewish world up in arms. Here's a quote from the chief rabbi of England, Joseph Hertz, in 1931. On the morrow of all this post-war woe and delusion, and on the brink of such threatened upheaval, the League of Nations could still think it worthwhile to embark on a quixotic enterprise like calendar tinkering. End quote. The international fixed calendar, however, was widely popular among some businessmen, including Kodak founder George Eastman. Profit comparisons were difficult across months ranging from 28 to 31 days, and obscured trends that might otherwise be apparent. In 1928, Eastman had already implemented the international fixed calendar internally at Kodak, and was spending his own money to persuade the rest of the world to follow suit. The Fourth General League of Nations Conference on Communication and Transit began on October 12, 1931. Hundreds of calendar proposals had been submitted, but only one was really under consideration, the International Fixed Calendar. And the attitude among government delegates at the conference seemed to be that the IFC was all but a done deal. As the conference wore on, religion became a sticking point for others as well. Seventh-day Adventists also raised concerns about the Sabbath, while various delegates debated which fixed date should be assigned to Easter. Finland wanted it in the late spring, Norway preferred April 20th to avoid conflict with the cod fishing season, and Ireland refused to participate without a unanimous agreement from the ecclesiastical authorities. Proponents of the International Fixed Calendar continued to push the calendar at additional meetings over the years, but the momentum died out. An attempt to create something that would work for everyone had turned into something that pleased just about no one. Thank you for watching. Please let me know your thoughts on this ancient calendar system and our modern calendar in the comments. Are they really covering something up here? We'll look into this topic more in the future. For now, you can support us by joining the Patreon. The link is below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.